Hello everyone, welcome to Crafty Soup. My name is Misty and today I have for you the final day of my Layout a Day challenge for the month of May. And this story is all about something that you keep with you all the time, and that prompted me to tell the story about how I have such dry lips that I have to stash lip balm everywhere. Now normally I record the day before and then post the video the next day, but this one was actually recorded on May 28th and I just enjoyed it so much that I wanted to share this one. So I have these 6 photos printed out in a circle shape, and if you need any help on how to do this digitally, I do have a tutorial on how to restrict photos to certain shapes and sizes, and I will leave you a link for that. Now I did leave these photos a little bit big because I knew I was going to die cut them out, and I wanted to have enough of a border that I could use a die and get all of the white space cropped out. And now, because I had 6 photos and I was arranging them in this kind of circular pattern, that completely reminded me of a color wheel. And so that's where I decided to go technique-wise with this project. I pulled out some watercolor paper and my watercolor paints, and now I'm going to give myself a circle. Now, I don't trust myself to do good enough circles freehand, so if you don't have a circle template of any sort, this is a tip that you can use. You can tie a string onto a pencil and then mark the center of your paper. Now, a regular ruler isn't long enough to do that, so I will take a sheet of cardstock, cut it in half, and then tape it back together so that it's nice and long, and that will give me a ruler, so to speak, a straight edge to span the width of my paper. And I just line it up from corner to corner and make a small mark in the middle, and then it's hard to see on camera, but then I go the opposite corner to corner and just do a little cross hatch where those 2 lines intersect, and that will be the center of my circle. So then I can just hold my string on that center spot and kind of wrap it around with that string. And I did kind of slip with the string a little bit, but pencil is erasable, so I just erased it and moved on. Now the harder part of this is to mark equal distance across this circle. And really what I do is I line up my ruler with that center marking again, and then make a mark on one side of the circle and on the other. And then I kind of measure in between. I haven't gotten to that part yet. Here we go. I measure in between each of those hatch marks and I make sure that they're equal. And if they're not, I'll erase them and kind of do it again. And then I have this little circle template that has an inner circle that's slightly smaller than the one I used to cut my photos. And I just put that over each of my marks and outlined a loop around the outside of the circle. And then I erased most of the pencil lines that are going to show up or be left behind. Now, most of the pencil lines will be covered up by my photos, so I just erased whatever was going to show. And then I wet my entire paper, and I sped that up quite a bit for you because it can take a little while, and I go over and I wet it, and then once I've got everything wet, I will re-wet it again. And then I'm just dropping in saturated color. And here I am working on the orange, and I just realized I'd covered up 2 sections of this circle. So while it's still wet, I will put clean water on top of that color and then sop it up with a towel, paper towel. I use reusable towels that I just throw in the washer. And then I can reapply my color and move on. And so that is an easy way to fix a mistake. That works best with lighter colors. Darker colors are going to be harder to remove all the way. But because I am working in the color wheel, they're going to overlap anyway, so it's okay. Let me play a little bit of music for you and we'll get through this watercoloring. One last tip before we do that, I will re-wet a new section before I drop the next color in, just to help the watercolors flow, because if it starts to dry out on me, it will behave differently. with that first layer completely dry, I am doing a second layer on top, and I am kind of leaving more open white space as I do this layer, so you'll get more variety of color. Wherever I paint over the top of the previous layer, it will be darker, and wherever I don't, it will stay lighter. And then I added some splatters while it was still wet in black, and they will dry back lighter and leave some gray splotchiness to them, and wherever they hit dry paper, they will stay more crisp and vibrant black splatters. So that's something I like to do with the black to help kind of blend it in a little bit. I did pull out a few embellishments that I'm going to add to each of the little photo areas. But before I do that, I realized the photos seemed a little too stark on top of the watercolor, so I wanted to add a little more softness. And I really like the idea of this tissue paper because it's all crinkly, and that reminds me of the wrinkles and creases in my dry lips, so I'm going with it. And then I put one layer of tissue paper down, and I didn't quite think that was enough, so I'm doing it again, and I'm going to trim, just rough trim into a circle, because everything is flowy in this page. I didn't feel like I needed those circles to be super crisp. So I just trimmed a rough circle, 2 layers of that tissue paper, and then I think that is enough of a softness to these photos that works. And then I'm popping up on my foam tape and then adhering them so that some of that color peeks around the edge of each photo. And I'm going to go ahead and move on to my title, which is just going to say Dry Lips. And then with my letters in place, I decide, oh, they're not quite in place, but as I get my letters in place, I was thinking that they looked a little bland here in the middle, kind of stark, and they needed a little something. And so I pulled that. Oh, here's a tip for you. Sometimes I will use a brayer to really get things to stick down well to the rougher texture watercolor paper. So here's the detail I'm adding to the title. I used that same template and added a circle around it to mimic all of the circular photos. So I thought that worked really well. And then I went ahead and added my journal all the way around the edge of a layout, which is something I like to do. I'm adding a sketchy border underneath my writing, and that will finish off the basis of this layout. Now I am going to give a little bit of detail to each photo. So each photo is going to have a little kind of location of where I've stashed all of this lip balm around the house, in my purse, in the car, etc. And then I have some icons that I'm going to add to each circle as well to emphasize those locations. So I've got a little purse die cut for the purse area, and a car die cut for the car area. Now I did try to mix it up a little bit and use different things in each area. Like I have real keys for the entry zone. I'm going to use some stamping for one of them, some additional alphabet letters for another one. Because I didn't have enough icons that matched each other in style, I went ahead and tried to make everything a different style. And that's another way to go about it. If you can't match, go completely different, and it has a sameness to it by being different, if that makes any sense. So that is one of the tips I use when I don't have ephemera, etc. that matches. So here is my final technique. Have you ever tried watercolor painting through a stencil? This is something I haven't done a lot of, but it is something you definitely can do. Now you don't want to use a lot of water with this. You want a pretty dry brush and a pretty saturated amount of watercolor on your brush, because if you have too much water, it's just going to leak under the stencil and you'll have a puddly mess. So keep it on the drier side, and you can watercolor through any stencils. And then while that paint's still wet, I'm adding just a touch of darker color right to the edge of those drops, and that adds some very simple dimension, and that will finish off my layout for this time. So I will leave you with a few close-up photos of this project. And with that, I'm wrapping up this Layout a Day challenge. If you're interested in giving this challenge a try, the scraphappy.org group who hosts this challenge has a free 1-week trial for you. And there are details about that trial on the website, and I will leave links here on the screen for you as well as in the show notes, so you can go ahead and go check that out. I think a lot of us members will be playing along with that free trial so that you will have some community with you as you give this a try. And I will be back on Wednesday with my regular schedule for the month of June. I will start off the month with a kit build from the Counterfeit Kit Challenge. I hope you join me then.